Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to a third-person tower defense game tutorial. So, in this episode what we did is actually we went ahead and we opened up Photoshop a little bit and we've created this this atlas texture in which we're going to be putting the spell buttons, the tower buttons, and all other kind of buttons we still don't know, but we've got all of this nice space to put some 128 by 128 buttons. All of these buttons are stored inside of the UI manager so we can access them for pretty much anything at any places in any script. So we have also shown how to change it in our spell button bar right here, and we've also fixed some scaling issue we had prior to that. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's take a look at this current bar down here, and this is what we're going to be modifying today. So we are going to open up, the first thing we're going to do is open up the UI manager. We're going to create an area sprite that contains all the little action thumbnail. I call them action thumbnail, but they're going to be all icons that we're going to be putting, say, 128 by 128, and we're going to be able to access them from pretty much anywhere. Now, I know this sounds really confusing, but I will show you inside of Photoshop what I'm talking about, and we will then move on to applying those thumbnails. So basically what I'm talking about is, like, you see how we got these buttons down here. They're usually just square buttons, and those ones represent spells, so we'd like to have an icon for every single one of our spells. Now I'd also like to have one little square like that, a thumbnail like that, for the tower, so whenever we select the tower we can actually choose from a thumbnail selection on the screen, at least, so we can actually see what we're going to put there, and maybe even add some more text on top of it. But this is what I want to implement today, and we're going to start by creating that texture that contains pretty much all the sprites. So I will just go ahead and open up Photoshop really quickly. Now I know we're not all artists and stuff, but I will be putting this PSD file and also PNG once I'm done with the whole game, I guess. I'll be putting that on my Facebook page, so you can check that out if you want to download the PSD. Else, I will just show you how to do it right now. What I will do is actually create a atlas, so a texture that contains multiple little squares in it. I'm going to slice it in the engine, so I can use part of that picture pretty much anywhere. So what I'll do is, first I'll call this UI action thumbnails, and I will make sure that the width is, say, we're gonna make 128 by 128 squares, and the reason we're doing that is if we need to scale it down, then we can just divide by 2 and we're gonna have 64 by 64, and it still looks okay, I guess. So I'd like to have 8 of those. That's 1024 by 1024 pixels. So this is going to be our texture. I'm going to create a new folder, and let's name it, say, spell buttons with an S, and inside of it I'll create a folder called 1, so that's going to be my first spell button. Now I don't know how many spells button I'm going to have in my game, how many spells thumbnail I will need, but I'll just go ahead and allocate space for 8 of those right now. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer in my 1 folder, and I'll make a square that is 128 by 128. So I'm simply going to drag, then choose 128, and as for the height, 128 as well. Now guys, if you don't want to do this, there is a PNG on my Facebook page that you can download. I don't really like doing art, I'm not a good artist, but I do what I can. So here is a square. This is the square of our first button, and let's go ahead and just do some quick stuff in it. So I'll just say this is the background. Create a new layer. Let's make a corner like so, and maybe change the color of the fill for something like a really pale blue. This could work. And then finally I'm going to put some text in there, because this is of course temporary. This is pretty much always temporary in terms of art. So I'll just go ahead and say spell button 1, then scale it up, And eventually, when we get good at drawing stuff, you could make, say, if this was the melee attack spell, we could make a little sword as a drawing. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do now is turn off the background. I'm not going to delete, just turn off. Then move this over. Oh wait, let's just add a stroke to that. Okay, good. Now I'm going to duplicate my folder by hitting Ctrl J on the keyboard. Change the name for 2. Ctrl T for 3 transform, and then move this over 128 exactly. Like this. And this would be spell button 2. And I'm just going to duplicate all of those together. Now we're going to do 128 times 2, which gives us 256. And we just keep changing the number inside of it until we finally get all of our buttons. So duplicate once more, and this should be done after that. So that's 512. And now if I zoom in a little bit more, 5, 6, 7, and finally 8. Okay, so those are the spell buttons. And I would like to have a row for the tower buttons as well. So I will quickly just simply copy all of this. So Ctrl J again. Make this tower buttons. Ctrl T, move it down by 128. And I need to zoom in a little bit more for this to work. So 128 right there. And those are the tower buttons. So I'll just change the text for tower. In every single one of these, and maybe change the color as well if you wish. I don't really want to spend the whole episode on making art, so I will just simply change the text. And we will move on to actually implementing in the game. So now imagine that we have all our texture in there, all the texture you want. We're ready to pretty much just import this in the game. Oh, but before that, let's just make sure that we create one that is default when you have no texture. So simply going to duplicate any of those, put it outside of the folder, and let's call this one default. And I will move it at the very end, so the very last index, like so. And let's go ahead and change the text for null. Maybe even change the color if you wish. Okay. So we've got all of these buttons. Now let's go ahead and just save this. I'm going to hit Ctrl S. So I'm saving my PSD file outside of my asset folder, and then I will go ahead and save a PNG file inside of my asset folder. So you see how we have this artwork that we just created? Now we have the asset. If we go inside of asset, we also have the artwork folder, but that is for the production stuff. That is for not production, that is for, you know, release. And if we want to work on these texture, we have to go in the production folder, which is just one step above that. Okay, so now we have a folder for that. Let's go ahead and create a new folder for, say, the UI. Or actually, you know what? We're not going to do that just yet. We're going to create a resource folder inside of the asset folder. And we'll save that inside of here. I will come back to the resource folder in a moment. In fact, let's do it right now. If we take a look at our project folder, we've just created the resource folder. Now this is something really cool with Unity. If you create a folder called resources, just like this with capital letter and no mistakes at all, then you get to access whatever is inside of that folder by calling a function called resources.load. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. So guys, make sure you make a resource folder and you name it exactly like this. Don't make any mistakes. The capital letter has to be there, the S has to be there, and put your UI action thumbnail inside of it. Okay, so once that is done, we're gonna go back inside of the UI manager and just load them up, load all of those texture. Now the way we're going to do this is we are going to go up here and declare a private list of actually a private sprite array, so sprite array that we're going to call action thumbnails, like this. And inside of the initialize and update, we're going to go at the very bottom here and type in action thumbnails is equal to resources dot load all of type sprite, and then we gotta give it the path. So right now, if we just do it like this, it's going to load everything of inside the asset folder, but not the asset, sorry, the resource folder. But since we don't really want to load everything because eventually we're gonna have more stuff, we are going to create a new folder inside of that. Let's call it action thumbnails. Now I'm going to copy this name that we just put in the folder and also put my UI action thumbnail inside of it. I'm going to copy and paste it in there just like so, and we're going to load it as a sprite array. Now this way we should actually get only one, because this is only one sprite. We haven't done our slicing just yet. Talking about slicing, let's actually go and do it. So we're going to choose our image that we've imported, this one, the UI action thumbnails. We're going to go under texture type, go for sprite 2D and UI, and change the sprite mode for multiple, because we're going to have multiple sprites. Now open up the sprite editor, hit apply, and this is what we get. So we get some kind of window where we are allowed to just slice picture, just like I'm doing right now. I could actually take a picture of this whole square, but we don't want to do this. Of course, we want to make our own. In fact, we're not going to make our own. We're going to let Unity do it by simply clicking on slice up here, do a slice grid by cell size, and we know we've got picture that are 128 by 128, so we're going to hit slice on this. Now I don't know if you see, but it pretty much created a slice of every single one of these, and didn't create any in the center because we have well, we have blank picture, so it's not going to slice nothing, right? But it also created another one over here. It's really hard to see in the video, I know, so let me just try to find a way to show you. I'm going to hit apply, go back, and then if we open up the little drop down menu next to our sprite now, as you can tell in the preview, we actually get these buttons that are sliced. Now all of these are going to be stored inside of a array. In fact, this array right here, the action thumbnail array. So all we gotta do now is inside of our spells, every single one of these, we need to be able to point to a index in this array. So we're gonna go ahead and open up the base spell, and inside of the base spell I'm going to create a new field up here, a protected field, protected int, that we're gonna call thumbnail index. Now the thumbnail index should be 63 by default because we're 0 base and we're trying to point towards the 64th picture, which would always be this. But the only problem we get with that is that since the Unity slice, the sprite editor is smart enough not to slice picture where there's nothing, then we don't really get a total of 64 picture in the sprite array. In fact, we only got, what is it, we got 16, we got 17. And obviously if we got 17 and we're pointing towards the 63 index, we're gonna get a out of range error, and we can't really afford that. So I'm just going to leave it on 0 for now, and eventually when we have more texture in there, when we fill the whole grid, then we can go ahead and just put this on 63. But in fact this is not even going to matter in the end because we're going to be replacing it every single time. So base spell, let's put it on 0 for now, and we're going to go inside of the melee auto attack spell. So not auto attack, just the melee spell. Melee attack spell, which is just below that in our folder, and inside of the constructor I'm going to say thumbnail index is equal to 0 in this case, because this is going to be the first button right here. And then if we go inside the super jump spell, this could be index number 1. So thumbnail index is equal to 1. Okay. So we've got the thumbnail index in both of them. Now we need to create a way to actually change the picture inside of the button. So basically, if we look at our structure right now, this is one of our button. It has a button component in it and also an image component. We need to change the image component by this, and we're gonna have to play with the settings a little bit after that, but basically we need to change what is inside of the image component. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to go back inside of the base spell, and inside of here I will create a new function called public virtual void set thumbnail, like this, and we're going to say sprite image is equal to UI manager dot instance, and then we need to get the action thumbnail. Now I've made this public. We could be making it I made it private, but we could be making it public, so we could simply type the name after our UI manager.instance, but I don't really like that. I don't really like making things public that much. So what I'll do is I'll just create a function down here to actually access it instead. So I'll create a public sprite, and we're going to do get action thumbnail with a index, so int index, and inside of that we'll say return action thumbnail at index, like this. Now back inside of our base spell we can do get action thumbnail, and we're gonna send the thumbnail index like so. So now we've got the image, and this is supposed to work. The only reason this would not work is because you made a mistake inside of the resource folder here. That's the only place it could break right now, or you haven't sliced your picture just yet. So we've got this. Now we're gonna set the thumbnail, so we're gonna do spell button, which is a reference to our button we get right here, spell button dot get component, and we're getting the image component, then dot sprite is equal to the image we just got. Now if we manage to call this whenever we create our spell, which is where is it? It's at the combat, I believe. So under player combat, if we manage to call set thumbnail, then everything should work. So over here we say add spell. Let's press F12 on this, and inside of there, oh, there we go. So this is how we add a spell. We're gonna go down here and say spell dot set thumbnail, like this. And then if we press play, hopefully everything works in one go. That would be so amazing. And it does. Great, so we've got our spell buttons right here. Of course we've got some color to change, but here they are. Those are the first buttons of our game. Now if I hit maximize on play, let's see if there's any glitches. And there is, in fact. So what I've decided to do is I've decided to actually make my UI constant pixels. So the way I did this is by going inside of the UI root, under the canvas scaler, I've changed that for constant pixel size. So now it always, pretty much is always the same size, whatever my my screen is. So this way it works in maximize, the UI stays the exact same size, and if I squeeze it like this, of course it's going to have some weird behavior, but nobody's going to be playing that way. So as you can tell, it stayed the same size, and it's pretty much the same size as the what is it, the canvas. So this is why I prefer doing the constant pixel size, because I don't really have to mess around with that. Now if we go back under our prefab, we've got under prefab, UI, spell buttons. I'm going to simply drag and drop this guy inside of the spell button container so we can do some modification. So let's go down here. I'm going to set this null button, and I should be able to modify the layout element. Okay, so right now it says minimum width 75 and minimum height 75. Let's remove both of those. We're going to say minimum width is now 64 and the preferred width is 128 and preferred height also 128. Now we don't want to force expand on both sides. We don't even want to force expand at all. Maybe change the spell button container child alignment for middle left, so our buttons start from this side. And what else could we be changing so this works? Now if your button is stretched like this, make sure you check the preserve aspect under image, and then after that I think we're gonna be good. We could also change the tint whenever we click on the thing, but let's not do that just yet. Let's simply save this by hitting apply and then remove this, press play, and we should get our buttons right there. Now of course they don't look close to each other, they're not really at the right place, and that is because they're actually supposed to be 128 by 128, which means this should be approximately this big. And sorry about my awesome drawing. This should be approximately this big. Now when you hit play, this is what you get. Of course this looks a little bit confusing, in fact this looks really bad, but eventually when we have more spells, it is going to fit just fine with the layout group. Let me just show you right now. So I'm going to take one, duplicate it, and again and again. So it fits perfectly the ball if we have 5 of them, which is what we're gonna have in the end. So we're gonna have our auto attack spell, we're gonna have, and yeah, so the melee attack spell, maybe we're gonna get rid of this one. It's not really useful unless we create some kind of explosion at the bottom of the character which does AoE damage for our minions, but I don't know, we're still gonna see. But in the end we're gonna have the melee attack spell and then 4 other cool spell buttons, and maybe more. Then we get to choose which one we put in the bar. So eventually we're gonna get all of that, but right now we've pretty much completed what we needed to do this episode, guys. So thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this or if you learned something, please leave me a like, really appreciate that. And if you have any question or comment, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. So guys, thanks a lot for watching and I'll see you in the next episode.